No warnings, just karma.
The sweetest smiles can hide the darkest intentions, and on the night I celebrated the happiest milestone of my life, I nearly swallowed a betrayal that would have buried me. My name is Alina Whitmore, and the evening of my housewarming party was the moment I realized that sometimes the people clapping the loudest for you are secretly praying for your fall. I was 59 years old when I finally bought my own home, not inherited, not handed over in a divorce, not cozened by a man. Mine. Every mortgage payment came from decades of double shifts at the hospital, careful budgeting, and saying no to vacations, luxuries, and sometimes even rest. So when guests stepped through my front door that evening, their admiration felt like warm sunlight on skin that had known a lot of cold. Soft jazz played through the speakers. Vanilla candles flickered on the mantel. My living room glowed in gold and cream tones, calm and dignified, just the way I liked my life now. People kept touching my arm, my shoulder, saying, "Ellie, this place is beautiful," and for the first time in years I believed I had built something no one could take away from me. Then my younger brother, Daniel, arrived. He walked in like he owned the air, wearing a navy blazer that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. His smile was wide, confident, practiced. The kind of smile that had gotten him out of trouble his whole life. "Well, look at you," he said, spreading his arms. "Big homeowner now." He hugged me, but it felt like being wrapped in a silk scarf that was pulled just a little too tight. His wife Melissa followed behind him, polished, perfect hair, pearl earrings. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, taking in the hardwood floors, the crown molding, the new appliances visible through the open kitchen. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You did all this on your own?" she asked. "I did," I said, keeping my voice light. Daniel gave a low whistle. "Must be nice." I ignored the tone. I'd heard it before. The mix of disbelief and resentment that came whenever someone realized I had survived without their help. The party rolled on. Old neighbors, a few friends from church, some retired co-workers. Laughter rose and fell like waves. Compliments floated around me, wrapping me in a sense of earned peace. For one evening I let myself feel proud without apology. Then Daniel appeared at my side again, holding 2 small dessert plates. "I grabbed you the first slice," he said. "Can't have the guest of honor missing out." On each plate sat a generous piece of vanilla cake with raspberry filling, white frosting, delicate piping, elegant and simple. I frowned slightly. "I thought the caterer was handling dessert," I said. "They were," he replied quickly. "Melissa just asked them to set one aside special, extra love." Melissa was standing a few feet away watching us. Her smile was tight, like a string pulled too far. I took the plate from Daniel. The fork felt heavier than it should have. Something in my chest tightened, a quiet little alarm I couldn't explain. Maybe it was the way Daniel kept looking at my face instead of the cake. Maybe it was Melissa's eyes, sharp and fixed, not on the celebration but on me. I forced a chuckle. "Let me fix my dress, this zipper keeps twisting." I stepped aside near the dining table, turning my back slightly. My hand moved to the small of my back, pretending to adjust fabric. My heart was beating too fast now. I glanced over my shoulder. Melissa wasn't chatting. She wasn't laughing. She was staring at the plate in my hand like she was waiting for something to happen. A cold wave slid down my spine. Slowly, casually, I set my plate down on the table and picked up another identical slice that had been left near the centerpiece. I smoothed my dress, turned back, and smiled as if nothing in the world was wrong. "Okay," I said brightly, lifting the fork. Daniel leaned in just a little. "So," he said, "how does it taste?" I brought the fork close to my lips, then paused. "You know what? I should thank the caterer first. Be right back." Before he could respond, Melissa stepped forward and picked up the plate I had originally been holding. "Oh good," she said lightly, "I haven't tried it yet." She took a bite. Daniel's smile vanished. It didn't fade. It dropped like a mask slipping off a face that had forgotten how to hold it. 10 seconds passed, then Melissa blinked hard. "You okay?" someone asked. She swayed. Her fork clattered to the plate. And then she collapsed onto my dining room floor, knocking over a chair as guests screamed. I didn't move. I just stood there, the untouched cake in my hand, while my brother stared at his wife on the floor. And for the first time in his life, he looked afraid of something he couldn't charm his way out of. People think chaos is loud, but the most terrifying kind is the silence that falls right before everyone realizes something is terribly wrong. Melissa lay on my hardwood floor, her body stiff, her lips turning a frightening shade of grey. Someone screamed her name. Another guest shouted, "Call 911. Chairs scraped, glasses shattered, and the soft jazz music kept playing in the background like a cruel joke. Daniel dropped to his knees beside her. "Melissa, babe, hey, look at me." His voice shook, but there was something else there too, not just fear, calculation, panic that went deeper than concern. I slowly set my untouched plate on the sideboard, careful, steady, as if sudden movements might make the moment explode. My mind was racing, but my face stayed calm. Years of working in high-pressure situations had trained me well. When everyone else panics, you observe. "What happened?" Mrs. Langley from next door asked, clutching her chest. "She just fainted." Daniel snapped too quickly. "Maybe low blood sugar or something." "Low blood sugar doesn't turn lips blue." I knelt down on Melissa's other side. "Daniel, move." My voice was firm, clinical. I checked her pulse. Rapid, irregular, her breathing was shallow, almost gasping. "What did she eat?" I asked. Daniel froze for half a second, just half, but I saw it. "Just cake," he said. "So did I replied quietly, locking eyes with him. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Guests backed away, forming a wide circle. Some were crying, some were whispering. A few were already recording on their phones. That's the world we live in now. Tragedy first, empathy later. Melissa's eyes fluttered but didn't focus. Foam gathered slightly at the corner of her mouth. "Poison," my mind whispered. The paramedics burst in, efficient and fast. Oxygen mask, monitors, questions fired one after another. What did she ingest? Any allergies? How long ago? I answered clearly, giving them the timeline, the food served, the sudden collapse. Daniel kept talking over me, too loud, too eager. "She just overdid it, that's all. She gets dizzy sometimes." One of the paramedics glanced at me, then at him. He saw it too, something didn't fit. They loaded her onto the stretcher. As they wheeled her out, Daniel grabbed his coat. "I'm going with her." He didn't look at me, not once. The party was over, of course. Guests slipped out quietly, offering shaken hugs and murmured prayers. A few stayed behind to help clean up, but I insisted they leave. I needed the house empty. I needed silence. When the door finally shut behind the last guest, I turned to the dining table. 2 plates still sat there, one with a bite taken out of the cake Melissa had eaten, one untouched. Mine. I put on gloves from the kitchen drawer, hands steady, breathing slow. I wrapped both plates carefully in plastic wrap and placed them in separate containers. Then I called the police. "Yes," I said when the dispatcher answered. "I need an officer here. I believe there's been a poisoning." The word hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes. I explained everything calmly, from Daniel handing me the cake to Melissa collapsing after eating the swapped slice. "You're saying you think the cake was meant for you?" one officer asked. "I don't think," I said. "I know." They collected the plates, the leftover cake, even the trash. One officer walked through the house photographing everything. The other took my statement while I sat at my own dining table, staring at the place where Melissa had fallen. "Any idea why someone would want to hurt you?" he asked. I gave a humorless smile. "You have time." I told them about the inheritance. Our parents had passed 3 years ago. They left a modest estate, but the real asset was a piece of land that had skyrocketed in value after a commercial development moved nearby. Daniel had assumed it would all go to him. He always assumed that, but our parents had divided it equally. I sold my share wisely, invested, saved, bought this house. Daniel sold his share fast, bad investments, flashy lifestyle, debt. He asked me for money 6 months ago, I said no. The officer nodded slowly. Motive. Near midnight my phone rang. The hospital. "Melissa is in critical condition," the doctor said. "We found traces of a toxic substance. We've contacted law enforcement." "I already have," I replied. I hung up and sat in the dark living room, the house that had felt so full of warmth just hours earlier now echoing with something colder. Betrayal has a sound. It's the hum of realization when the past suddenly rearranges itself into a pattern you can't ignore. Daniel hadn't come to celebrate me. He had come to remove me. And he had almost succeeded, but he made one mistake. He forgot I learned long ago how to survive people who smile while they sharpen knives behind their backs. Sleep didn't come that night. I sat in my armchair with the lights off, watching the reflection of passing headlights slide across the walls of my living room like ghosts that didn't want to stay. Every creak of the house felt louder, every shadow heavier. This home had been my sanctuary just hours ago. Now it felt like a crime scene wrapped in memories I couldn't trust. My name is Elena Whitmore, and I have spent most of my life cleaning up messes other people made. But this time the mess had almost killed me. At 6:12 a.m. my phone rang again. I hadn't moved from the chair. "Ms. Whitmore, this is Detective Alvarez," the voice said, calm, focused. "We need you to come down to the station today. The hospital confirmed the substance found in your sister-in-law's system is not accidental." "I'll be there," I replied. Not once did my voice shake. By the time I walked into the police station, the shock had burned off, leaving something colder behind. Clarity. When betrayal comes from strangers, it wounds. When it comes from family, it rewrites your entire history. Daniel was already there. He sat in a plastic chair outside an interview room, sleeves rolled up, hair messy, face pale. He looked smaller than usual, like someone had let the air out of him. But when he saw me, his eyes hardened. You called the cops, he hissed. I called for help, I said evenly. Something you should have done before bringing poison into my house. His jaw tightened. You're out of your mind. Detective Alvarez stepped between us. Mr. Whitmore, you'll have your chance to speak inside. Inside the interview room, I told the story again, every detail, every look. Every word Daniel and Melissa had said. I didn't exaggerate, I didn't speculate. I just told the truth and let it stand on its own legs. Then the detective placed a clear evidence bag on the table. Inside was a small, crumpled paper packet. We found this in your brother's jacket pocket, he said. Lab says it's the same compound found in the cake, a fast-acting pesticide highly toxic if ingested. I closed my eyes briefly, not because I was surprised, because I was. He said she had low blood sugar, I murmured. The detective gave a thin nod. She's still alive, but barely. Doctors say if she survives, there could be permanent organ damage. I felt a strange mix of emotions swirl through me. Anger, sadness. And something else I hated admitting. Relief, not because she was suffering, but because the truth had surfaced before I became the one on a hospital bed. Daniel was arrested that afternoon, attempted murder, possession of a toxic substance with intent to harm. The words sounded unreal when I heard them, like they belonged to a crime show, not my family. News travels fast in quiet communities. By evening, neighbors were texting, church friends were calling. We had no idea. He always seemed so charming. You must be devastated. Devastated wasn't the word. Devastated is when something precious is taken from you. This was different. This was the moment you realize the thing you thought was precious never really existed. A week later, I was asked to come to the hospital. Melissa had regained consciousness. She looked fragile, tubes and wires surrounding her like a cage of consequences. Her skin was pale, her voice barely a whisper. Elena, she croaked when she saw me. I stood at the foot of her bed, not cruel, not warm, just steady. Why? I asked, her eyes filled with tears that slid slowly into her hair. He said if something happened to you, he'd get everything, the house, your investments. He said it was just a little, just enough to make you sick, to scare you into helping us financially. I felt the air leave my lungs. He told you that was okay? I asked quietly. I didn't think he'd really do it, she sobbed. I didn't know he already had it with him. But you knew something, I said. You watched me hold that plate like you were waiting for a show to start. She turned her face away. That was answer enough. I walked out of that hospital room lighter than I walked in. Not because forgiveness had happened. It hadn't, but because doubt was gone. The trial began 3 months later. I sat in the courtroom every day, dressed simply, hands folded in my lap, while lawyers discussed my life like it was paperwork. Daniel avoided looking at me at first. Then, as the evidence piled up, the toxicology reports, the financial records, the insurance inquiries he'd made about me weeks earlier, his confidence crumbled. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. When the judge sentenced him, the courtroom was silent. Attempted murder, the judge said firmly, is not a momentary mistake. It is a decision to end a life. You made that decision about your own sister. Daniel was led away in handcuffs. He finally looked at me then, not with anger, not with charm, but with the hollow stare of a man who realized too late that he had mistaken kindness for weakness. I held his gaze calmly because he was wrong about me. I had built my life piece by piece through exhaustion, heartbreak, and sacrifice. He thought I was soft because I was gentle. He thought I was easy to erase because I didn't fight loudly. But quiet people don't break. We endure. And when we finally stand up, we do it with evidence, with patience, and with a strength that doesn't need to shout to be undeniable. The courtroom should have felt like the end of the nightmare, but for me, it was only the beginning of understanding how deep betrayal can really go. My name is Elena Whitmore, and testifying against my own brother felt less like revenge and more like performing surgery without anesthesia. Necessary, precise, and excruciating. After the guilty verdict, I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt exposed. Every private detail of my finances, my will, my health records, even my daily routines had been laid out in court. The prosecution had proven Daniel didn't just act on impulse. He had studied my life like a blueprint. He knew I lived alone. He knew I didn't drink alcohol. He knew I loved vanilla cake. That detail haunted me. The detective later told me they found internet searches on Daniel's laptop. Tasteless poisons, delayed symptoms, inheritance laws, how long toxic substances stay in the bloodstream. Each search was a quiet step toward my grave. I went back home after the sentencing, expecting relief to greet me at the door. Instead, I felt watched, not by a person but by memory. Every room echoed with the image of Melissa collapsing. The dining table felt like evidence, not furniture. For the first time since moving in, I locked my bedroom door at night. A week later, I met with an estate attorney. If someone tried once, he said gently, we make sure no one can benefit from trying again. We updated everything. My will, my beneficiaries, medical directives. I donated a portion of my estate to a nursing scholarship fund. The rest would go to a trust managed by an independent firm with strict oversight. No family control. No loopholes. Daniel had tried to turn my life into a payout. Now even in death he would get nothing. Word spread quickly through extended relatives. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years suddenly called, voices coated in sympathy so thick it dripped. We always worried about you living alone. Family should stick together after something like this. Family, that word had changed shape for me. Family was Mrs. Langley next door who brought soup without asking questions. Family was my former co-worker Denise who installed security cameras around my house and refused to take payment. Family was the quiet police officer who called just to say, "We're keeping an eye on things." Blood had almost killed me. Strangers helped keep me safe. Then came the letters. Daniel started writing from prison. The first one was short. "You blew this out of proportion." It was supposed to be a scare, not a tragedy. I didn't reply. The second was angrier. "You always thought you were better than me. This is your fault too. I burned that one in the fireplace." The third was different. "I never thought they'd believe you over me." That line stayed with me, not because it hurt, but because it revealed everything. He had truly believed my calm nature, my quiet life, my lack of drama would make me invisible. He thought I wouldn't fight back because I never fought loud. He never understood that silence is not weakness. It is observation, it is memory. It is evidence waiting for the right moment. Spring arrived slowly that year. The trees outside my living room windows bloomed in soft whites and pinks, indifferent to human cruelty. I started gardening again, something I had stopped after my parents died. Digging my hands into the soil felt grounding, like reconnecting to a version of life that didn't revolve around court dates and police calls. One afternoon, Melissa requested to see me again. Against some people's advice, I went. She was out of the hospital now but permanently changed. Her kidneys were damaged. She would need treatment for the rest of her life. Her once polished appearance was replaced by fragility she couldn't hide. "I testified," she said quietly when I sat down. "I know," I replied. "They offered me a deal if I told the truth about Daniel planning it." I studied her face. "Why didn't you stop him?" Tears filled her eyes. "I was scared of losing everything, our house, our lifestyle." I told myself he was just talking. Then when I realized he meant it, I was already in too deep. "You watched me almost die," I said, not accusing, just stating a fact. She nodded, sobbing softly. "I have to live with that," she whispered. "Yes," I said gently, "you do." Forgiveness didn't bloom in that room, but understanding did. I left knowing something important. Not everyone who stands beside evil is evil at heart. Some are just too weak to walk away. That weakness nearly cost me my life, but it also taught me something about strength. Strength is not loud revenge. It is building a life so solid that even betrayal cannot collapse it. By summer, my home felt like mine again, not because I forgot what happened, but because I refused to let that night be the final chapter of my story. I hosted a small dinner, just 6 people, neighbors, friends, people who had shown up when it mattered. We ate at the same dining table under the same lights. And this time, when dessert was served, I took the first bite without fear. Because the people in that room weren't smiling to hide knives. They were smiling because they were genuinely glad I was still alive. Even after the trial, life carried a new rhythm. The whispers of betrayal had faded, but the lessons remained sharp, like freshly honed steel. I, Elena Whitmore, had survived not just an attempt on my life, but the disillusionment of realizing that those who share your blood aren't always your protectors. Some are predators in disguise. The weeks after Daniel's conviction were filled with calls from lawyers, estate managers, and sometimes journalists who smelled a sensational story. I answered politely, but kept my private life fiercely contained. I realized quickly that power wasn't in shouting at the world, it was in quietly controlling every outcome, leaving no space for anyone else to exploit weakness. I hired a private security consultant, someone discreet but thorough. Cameras, motion sensors, emergency protocols, every precaution a modern homeowner of my age and experience could need. Each measure felt like reclaiming my agency, a reassurance that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing to thrive. Then came the letter that surprised me most. It was from Daniel, now behind bars, written carefully with a steady hand. "You win. But remember, fear isn't always loud. It lingers, it waits. You can never fully escape it." I read it twice, then left it untouched on my kitchen counter. There was no fear in me, only clarity. He had overplayed his hand and the law had caught him. His threat existed only on paper now. A month later, I received an invitation for mediation regarding family assets. Daniel's lawyer proposed a settlement to split certain properties with Melissa, hoping to leverage guilt and manipulation. I didn't attend. I sent a legal representative instead. The message was clear: manipulation would not work, and any attempt to undermine my authority would be met with law, not emotion. I began to focus on rebuilding the parts of life I had neglected. The resistance can flourish even in soil that once seemed poisoned. My neighbors noticed the change, admiring how I turned the aftermath of betrayal into a renewed home. Melissa, slowly recovering, visited only twice more, always respectful, always distant. She knew she had played a role in the events that almost ended me, and I never feigned forgiveness. Her eyes, when she looked at me, reflected understanding, shame, and fear. That was enough closure. She understood the weight of consequences, and that was justice enough from me. Daniel's sentence was 20 years. The first time I saw him in court post-conviction, I didn't speak, I didn't glare, I merely observed. He was diminished not just by bars but by the inevitability of his own choices. He had gambled with my life for greed, and the system, along with my careful preparation, had ensured that he could not do it again. True justice, I realized, was both legal and strategic. It wasn't vengeance, it was smart domination over chaos. At home, I hosted small gatherings, close friends, people who had stood by me without expectation. We shared stories, laughter, and meals at the same table where betrayal had once almost claimed me. Every conversation, every shared memory, was a reaffirmation that life could continue without fear. The past existed, but it didn't dictate the future. I also started mentoring young women in my community, teaching them financial independence, self-defense, and the importance of legal awareness. I shared my story selectively, not as sensationalism, but as education. Strength, I taught them, was often invisible until tested, and when tested, it should shine brighter than the darkness around you. Weeks turned to months. The house felt full again, not with chaos but with deliberate warmth. I kept a small plaque in the living room: "Control your life, do not let it be controlled by others." Every morning I read it, not as a warning but as affirmation. Each day I had survived the impossible and emerged not broken but resolute. Daniel's presence faded from my daily consciousness. Legal walls contained him, societal judgment followed him, and in my world he became a shadow of a lesson rather than a looming threat. I finally understood. The ultimate victory over betrayal is reclaiming your peace, rebuilding your life, and ensuring no one can ever compromise your sanctuary again. And so my home, my life, and my spirit became my legacy. Not through loud confrontation, not through bitterness, but through careful, smart, unwavering action. Justice in its truest form is silent, powerful, and permanent. Thank you for following my story. If you found it gripping and inspiring, please *** like and subscribe * for more tales of courage, resilience, and triumph.